Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm a construction supervisor with 15 years under my belt, running crews that build the offices where people in suits make their money. But that Thanksgiving, my own sister decided I wasn't good enough to sit at the same Christmas table as her medical school friends. You know that feeling when someone you've sacrificed everything for looks you dead in the eye and tells you you're not worth their time? Well, stick around because this story's about what happens when the person funding someone's dreams gets called just a construction worker. I was wrapping up a job site inspection when my phone buzzed. Family group chat. Mom had sent one of those cheerful messages about Christmas planning, complete with way too many tree emojis. I smiled, wiping concrete dust off my hands before typing back. This was our thing. The whole family gathering at Mom and Dad's place in suburbia. Same traditions we'd kept for 28 years. Can't wait to see everyone. I'll bring the bourbon cake like always. The responses started pouring in immediately. Dad with his thumbs up emoji. Mom asking if I needed her recipe again, even though I'd been making that cake since I was 16. Then Jessica's message popped up, and something about the tone made my stomach drop. Actually, we need to talk about Christmas this year. 3 dots appeared and disappeared, then appeared again. I set my phone down and grabbed my hard hat. Dad's old yellow DeWalt that I'd inherited when he retired. The thing was beat to hell, scratched and dented from 2 decades of honest work, but it still did the job. Just like me. My phone rang. Jessica. Hey, Jess, what's up with Christmas? Mom's got her heart set on the usual crowd. Silence. Then that voice I'd been hearing get progressively colder over the past 2 years, ever since she started her clinical rotations. Marcus, I need you to understand something. This year is different. I'm bringing some colleagues from school, important people. These are future doctors, people who matter in my field. Okay, so the more the merrier, right? Mom loves cooking for a crowd. That's not... Listen, this isn't easy to say, but I don't think it's appropriate for you to be there. I almost dropped the phone. A cement truck rumbled past, drowning out whatever she said next. I'm sorry, what? Did you just uninvite me from Christmas? You're just a construction worker, Marcus. These people are sophisticated, educated. They're used to a certain environment. I can't have them thinking this is the kind of family I come from. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. 28 years of Christmas mornings. 28 years of me being the one who fixed Mom's wobbly dining room table, who hung the outdoor lights, who drove through blizzards to make sure I was there for gift opening. Just a construction worker. Jessica, what the hell are you talking about? I'm your brother. You're embarrassing, Marcus. You show up in work clothes, you smell like sawdust, and frankly, you don't understand the conversations we have. These people are my future colleagues. I can't afford to look unprofessional. I stared at Dad's hard hat in my hands. He'd worn this thing while building half the houses in our neighborhood, including the one where Jessica grew up warm and safe. The one where she'd studied for the MCATs at the kitchen table he'd built with his own hands. So, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying maybe you could visit on Christmas Eve instead. Early. Before anyone important arrives. Important. Before anyone important arrives. And Mom and Dad are okay with this? They understand it's a delicate situation. This is about my career, Marcus. Some things are more important than tradition. The line went quiet except for construction noise in the background. I could hear my crew calling for me, but I was frozen. 8 years. 8 years I'd been writing checks for her education. 8 years of, I'll pay you back when I'm a doctor, Marcus. You're investing in our family's future. You know what, Jessica? You're right. Some things are more important than tradition. I hung up. The rest of that day passed in a haze. I finished the walkthrough on autopilot, my mind spinning. By evening, I was home in my little ranch house, the one I'd bought instead of something nicer because I was putting Jessica through medical school. I sat at my kitchen table with Dad's hard hat in front of me and a beer getting warm in my hand. My phone buzzed. Group chat again. Mom. Jessica explained the situation. Maybe it's for the best this year, honey. She's worked so hard. Dad. Let's just keep the peace, son. Keep the peace. Don't rock the boat. Let Jessica have her sophisticated Christmas with her sophisticated friends, and maybe Marcus can show up for leftovers. I took a long pull of beer and really looked at that hard hat. Dad had given it to me the day I graduated high school, when I told him I wasn't going to college. Education comes in different forms, he'd said. This hat represents something just as valuable as any diploma. Honest work builds character, and character builds everything else. Honest work. That's what had been paying Jessica's tuition for 8 years. That's what bought her textbooks, her stethoscope, her apartment deposit. That's what covered her car payments so she could drive to clinical rotations in something reliable. Just a construction worker's money, apparently. I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking app. The numbers were all there, neat little rows that told the story of my sacrifice. $87,000 in tuition payments, $12,000 for her car, $15,000 for living expenses over the years, book allowances, emergency vet bills for her cat, that time she needed dental work, $114,000 from just a construction worker. My phone rang again. Jessica. Marcus, don't be dramatic about this. It's one Christmas. One Christmas where I'm not good enough to be your brother. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. I'm embarrassing. I smell like sawdust. I don't understand sophisticated conversations. Well, you don't, do you? When Dr. Patterson talks about surgical techniques, or Rebecca discusses her research on cardiac interventions, what exactly would you contribute to that conversation? I set Dad's hard hat on the table and stared at it. This conversation was happening. This was really happening. I contribute the money that keeps you in those conversations, Jessica. Silence. That's different. That's what family does. Family also shows up for Christmas. Family doesn't get embarrassed by where the money comes from. Marcus, please, just this once. After I graduate, things will be different. But right now, I need to make the right impressions. These people could be my colleagues for the next 30 years. And what about me? What am I for the next 30 years? You're my brother. That doesn't change. No, apparently I'm your embarrassing brother who's good enough to pay bills but not good enough to meet your friends. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Construction workers learn to read people, to sense when someone's about to crack under pressure. Jessica was close. Fine, she said finally. If you're going to be petty about this, then be petty. But don't expect me to apologize for wanting better for my life. Better than what? Better than the family that raised you? Better than the money that's keeping you in school? Better than ending up like Dad wearing a hard hat and coming home dirty every day? The words hung in the air like toxic fumes. Better than ending up like Dad, the man who'd built her childhood home with his own hands, the man who'd worked double shifts to afford her college prep courses, the man whose work ethic had taught me the value of showing up every day, even when the job was hard. You know what, Jessica? You're absolutely right. You should definitely avoid ending up like Dad, or like me. In fact, let me help you with that. What do you mean? I mean, since we're such an embarrassment, maybe you shouldn't be taking embarrassing money from embarrassing people. The silence stretched out. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. Marcus, don't be ridiculous. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? You can't have it both ways, Jess. You can't cash my checks and then pretend I don't exist when it's convenient. This is just about Christmas dinner. No, this is about respect. And apparently I don't deserve any. I hung up again. Within 10 minutes, my phone was blowing up. Mom calling, Dad calling, Jessica texting increasingly frantic messages. But I was done talking. I sat there with Dad's hard hat, thinking about every Christmas morning, every birthday, every graduation that had led to this moment. The thing about being a construction worker is you learn to see the foundation of everything. You learn that fancy buildings fall down if the foundation isn't solid. And right now, I was looking at my family's foundation and seeing cracks that had been growing for years. Jessica had been getting more distant ever since she started medical school. Little comments about my job, my clothes, my truck. The way she'd introduced me to her friends as my brother who does construction instead of my brother Marcus. The way she'd stopped inviting me to her school events, her apartment parties, her study group dinners. I'd told myself it was just the stress of medical school. She was busy, she was tired, She was focused on her future. But this Christmas ultimatum wasn't stress talking. This was who she'd decided to become. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. She didn't mean it the way it sounded, honey. She's just nervous about her career. But she did mean it exactly the way it sounded. And I was done pretending otherwise. I picked up Dad's hard hat and walked to my bedroom closet. In the back, behind my work clothes and safety gear, was a box I'd been adding to for 8 years. Bank statements, canceled checks, tuition receipts, text messages where Jessica promised to pay me back once I'm established. Time to see exactly how much just a construction worker's money was worth. The next morning, I was back on the job site before sunrise. November in Michigan means cold, gray dawns and frozen ground that fights every shovel. But there's something about physical work that clears your head, helps you think through problems that seem impossible in the dark. I was checking foundation measurements when my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Marcus Chen? Yeah, who's this? This is Rebecca Martinez. I'm a friend of your sister's from medical school. She gave me your number. One of the sophisticated friends. One of the important people I wasn't good enough to meet. What can I do for you, Rebecca? I wanted to call because Jessica told me about the Christmas situation, and honestly, I think she's making a huge mistake. I stopped mid-measurement. Come again? Look, I don't know you, but I know what medical school does to people. It makes you think your worth is tied to your title, your income, your social status. But the best doctors I know, the ones who actually connect with patients, they come from working families. They understand what real life looks like. I leaned against my truck, not sure what to say. My dad's a mechanic, Rebecca continued. My mom cleans houses. And you know what? I'm proud of that. They taught me that all honest work has dignity. Jessica's forgotten that. She's embarrassed by me. She's embarrassed by herself. She's scared that if people know where she comes from, they'll think she doesn't belong. But that's her problem, not yours. I thought about Dad's hard hat sitting on my kitchen table. Thanks for calling, Rebecca. That means more than you know. For what it's worth, I'd be honored to meet the brother who supported Jessica through medical school. That's not embarrassing, that's extraordinary. After she hung up, I stood there in the cold morning air, watching my crew arrive for another day of honest work. These were good people, hard-working people. People who showed up every day, rain or shine, to build something that mattered. People like Dad, people like me. And if that wasn't good enough for Jessica anymore, then maybe it was time she learned what sophisticated really cost. That evening, I sat down with Dad's hard hat and opened my laptop. Time to do some math. Time to figure out exactly what 8 years of embarrassing support had added up to. Time to see what happened when just a construction worker decided he was done being taken for granted. Because Jessica was right about one thing. This Christmas was going to be different. Very different. The numbers didn't lie. They never do when you're dealing with construction. Measurements are either right or they're not. Foundations are either solid or they collapse. Same principle applied to my bank statements. I spread 8 years of financial records across my kitchen table, like blueprints for a job that had gone horribly wrong. Dad's hard hat sat in the center of it all, a yellow reminder of the honest work that had funded Jessica's transformation from my little sister into someone who was embarrassed to know me. $87,000 in tuition payments, all documented with neat bank transfers labeled Jessica Medical School. $12,000 for her Honda Civic because I can't show up to clinical rotations in a beat-up car, Marcus. $15,000 in living expenses over the years, rent deposits, emergency grocery money. That time her laptop died during a finals week. Another $8,000 in miscellaneous expenses that added up like small leaks in a roof. Textbooks, medical equipment, professional clothes for interviews, even her damn cat's surgery when Mr. Whiskers got into antifreeze. $122,000. Not 114 like I'd estimated in my head. $122,000 from just a construction worker to help his sister become someone who thought she was too good for him. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where Jessica had promised this was an investment in our family's future. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. I'd been her personal bank for 8 years, and she'd never even bothered to keep track of how much I'd sacrificed. My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. Marcus, please don't be dramatic. It's one Christmas dinner. After I graduate, I'll make it up to you. Make it up to me. Like this was some small favor instead of nearly a decade of my life's work. I scrolled through our old messages, screenshot after screenshot of promises. I'll pay you back with interest once I'm established. You're investing in both our futures. I couldn't do this without you, Marcus. You're the best brother ever. ID. But the most damning evidence wasn't in the bank statements or text messages. It was in my voicemail folder from 3 weeks ago. Jessica had called while I was on a job site, and I'd let it go to voicemail. Good thing, too, because she'd apparently forgotten she was still connected. I played it back now, my stomach clenching as I heard her voice talking to someone in the background. Oh, that's just my brother. He's in construction or whatever. Very blue collar. I don't really talk about him with the medical school crowd. It's kind of embarrassing, you know? Like, what would I even say? My brother hits things with hammers for a living? God, can you imagine? Laughter from whoever she was talking to. Then Jessica again. I mean, he's fine for what he is, but he's not exactly family material for the kind of life I'm building. Sometimes I think about what it'll be like when I'm established, and honestly, we'll probably just drift apart naturally. That's probably for the best. Not exactly family material. We'll probably just drift apart naturally. I saved that voicemail to 3 different places and sat back in my chair. 8 years of sacrifice, and I wasn't even family material. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I had research to do. Jessica's medical school had a public directory of students and their activities. Dr. Jessica Chen, class of 2024, president of the Future Physicians Society, dean's list every semester. There she was at charity galas, medical conferences, networking events. Always smiling, always polished, always surrounded by other people in expensive clothes, talking about their important careers. I dug deeper. Her social media was a carefully curated showcase of medical school achievement. Photos from clinical rotations, study groups in coffee shops that charged $8 for a latte, weekend trips to medical conferences in Chicago and Detroit, everything designed to project success, sophistication, belonging. But the most interesting thing was what wasn't there. 8 years of scrolling through her Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I found exactly 0 mentions of her family. 0 photos of holidays at home, 0 acknowledgement of the construction worker brother who'd made it all possible. It was like we'd never existed. I found her roommate's contact information through the medical school directory. Sarah Kim, also a 4th-year med student. I called from a number Jessica wouldn't recognize, my work phone. Hi, Sarah, this is Marcus Chen, Jessica's brother. I'm trying to plan something special for her graduation and was hoping you could help me. Oh my God, you're Jessica's brother. She talks about you all the time. Interesting. She does? Well, not really talks about you, but complains about you. She's always saying how embarrassing her family is, how she can't wait to be independent, so she doesn't have to deal with. Oh God, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. No, please. I'd like to know what she says. Long pause. I really shouldn't. Sarah, I've been supporting Jessica financially for 8 years. I think I have a right to know how she really feels about that. Another pause. Then, she calls you guys the blue-collar people. She says her family doesn't understand her world and that she's basically supporting herself through school. She told everyone her parents are paying for everything and that she comes from a medical family. Last month, she told Dr. Patterson that her father is a retired surgeon. My dad, the retired surgeon. The man who'd spent 30 years swinging hammers and running electrical wire so his daughter could have opportunities he'd never had. Has she ever mentioned paying anyone back? Like loans from family? Jessica? No, she always talks about how she's going to be debt-free when she graduates because her family has money. She says she's lucky that way. Lucky. Debt-free because her family has money. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you friends with her? Really friends? I We're study partners. We live together because the rent is cheaper, but friends? I don't know. Jessica doesn't really do friends, she does networking. I thanked Sarah and hung up, my hand shaking slightly. Jessica hadn't just hidden me from her medical school world. She'd created an entirely fictional version of our family. Rich parents, medical background, someone worthy of the life she was building. The construction worker who'd actually funded that life didn't fit the narrative. Over the next week, I called in more favors than I'd used in 15 years of construction work. My buddy Jake worked security at the medical school and could get me visitor access. My cousin Tony was a paralegal who helped me understand exactly what kind of financial documentation would be legally sound. And my old high school friend Pete, who'd become a private investigator, helped me organize everything into a case file that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. The medical school was having their annual holiday gala in 2 weeks, the same weekend as our family Christmas. The event Jessica had told me was too sophisticated for blue-collar people. The event where she'd be surrounded by all her important colleagues and future professional connections. Perfect. I spent those 2 weeks preparing like I was planning a major construction project. Every detail mapped out, every contingency accounted for, every piece of evidence verified and documented. I even bought a suit, my first suit in 10 years, and got my hair cut at an actual salon instead of the barbershop where I usually went. The night before the gala, I sat in my kitchen with Dad's hard hat and all the evidence spread out in front of me. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, that damning voicemail, confirmation from Sarah about Jessica's lies to her classmates. 8 years of proof that the sophisticated Dr. Jessica Chen was built on a foundation of lies and construction worker money. My phone rang. Mom. Marcus, honey, I know you're upset about Christmas, but Jessica called crying. She says you're not answering her texts. That's right. She's worried you're going to do something drastic. She thinks you might cut off her tuition payments. Smart girl. Marcus, you can't punish her for being focused on her career. She's worked so hard. With my money, Mom. My money and my support and my sacrifice, while she tells people I'm an embarrassment who's not family material. Silence. She didn't mean that. I have it on recording, Mom. She absolutely meant it. Well, maybe you two can work this out after she graduates. Just help her finish this last semester and then... No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. I'm done being the family ATM for someone who's ashamed I exist. And tomorrow night, everyone in her sophisticated medical world is going to learn exactly who's been funding Dr. Chen's education. Marcus, please don't do anything you'll regret. I looked at Dad's hard hat, thinking about all the times he'd come home tired and dirty but proud of what he'd built that day. All the times he'd taught me that honest work has dignity, that you measure a person by their character, not their job title. I won't regret it, Mom, but Jessica might. The medical school's holiday gala was everything I'd expected. Elegant venue, open bar, people in expensive clothes talking about important things while classical music played in the background. The kind of event where a construction worker would stick out like a broken thumb. Unless that construction worker was wearing a $500 suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence. I'd paid for a ticket under my real name, Marcus Chen. The registration desk didn't blink. Chen wasn't uncommon, and there was no reason to connect Jessica's embarrassing brother with this well-dressed man checking in for the evening's festivities. I found Jessica almost immediately. She was holding court near the cocktail reception, surrounded by 5 or 6 other medical students and what looked like a professor. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week, her hair perfectly styled, her laugh perfectly pitched for the sophisticated crowd. She looked beautiful. She looked successful. She looked like she belonged in this world of important people, talking about important things. She also looked like she'd forgotten that everything she was wearing, everything she was celebrating, had been paid for by someone she was too embarrassed to acknowledge. I positioned myself across the room and waited. Medical students are creatures of habit. They network in predictable patterns, moving from group to group like they're making rounds in a hospital. Eventually, Jessica would make her way to the presentation area where faculty were giving updates on research projects and student achievements. That's where I'd be waiting. Dr. Patterson, the same Dr. Patterson that Sarah had mentioned, the one Jessica had told that our dad was a retired surgeon, was introducing the evening's program when I made my move. I walked up to the microphone during the polite applause between speakers. "Excuse me, Dr. Patterson, but I have something to add to the evening's presentations." Confused murmuring from the crowd. Jessica's face went white when she saw me. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" Dr. Patterson asked. "I'm Marcus Chen, construction supervisor, 15 years experience. Also the primary financial supporter of one of your students, Dr. Jessica Chen." The room went quiet. Jessica started moving toward me, panic written across her face. "Marcus, what are you doing here? This isn't the place." "Actually, this is exactly the place." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "See, I've been hearing about this sophisticated crowd for months, about how important and educated everyone is, about how some people aren't good enough to be in the same room as future doctors." I handed Dr. Patterson the top sheet from my evidence folder, a bank statement showing 8 years of tuition payments. I was curious what you all would think about a construction worker who's invested over $120,000 in medical education. Someone who's been paying tuition, living expenses, car payments, and emergency costs for a student who told her classmates she comes from a wealthy medical family. Dr. Patterson looked at the document, then at Jessica, then back at me. "I'm not sure I understand." "Let me clarify." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the presentation system, another thing Jake had helped me figure out. "This is a voicemail from 3 weeks ago. I think it'll explain everything." Jessica's voice filled the room through the speaker system. "Oh, that's just my brother. He's in construction or whatever, very blue collar. I don't really talk about him with the medical school crowd. It's kind of embarrassing, you know? Like, what would I even say? My brother hits things with hammers for a living? God, can you imagine?" The laughter from Jessica's friend echoed through the silent room. Then her voice again. "I mean, he's fine for what he is, but he's not exactly family material for the kind of life I'm building. Sometimes I think about what it'll be like when I'm established. And honestly, we'll probably just drift apart naturally. That's probably for the best." Dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. "This construction worker," I continued, "this embarrassing blue-collar person who hits things with hammers has been the sole financial support for Jessica's medical education. Not wealthy parents, not a medical family background, just someone who believed in his sister's dreams enough to sacrifice his own financial future." I pulled out more documents and handed them to Dr. Patterson. Bank statements going back 8 years, text messages promising to pay me back, receipts for everything from textbooks to car payments to emergency veterinary bills for her cat. Jessica found her voice. "Marcus, please stop. This isn't what you think." "Actually, it's exactly what I think." I turned to address the room. "My sister told me I couldn't come to Christmas because I'm just a construction worker and would embarrass her in front of important people like you. She said I don't understand sophisticated conversations and that I smell like sawdust." I reached into my briefcase one more time and pulled out Dad's old hard hat. This belonged to my father. He wore it for 30 years while building houses, office buildings, and schools, including the house where Jessica grew up. The house where she studied for her MCATs at a kitchen table he built with his own hands. I set the hard hat on the podium. Hard hat? He taught me that all honest work has dignity, that you measure a person by their character, not their job title, and that when you help family, you do it because you love them, not because you expect recognition. The room was completely silent. Jessica was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. But character works both ways, and I continued. It's not just about giving help. It's about acknowledging it. It's about treating the people who sacrifice for you with respect. And it's about being honest about who you are and where you come from. I looked directly at Jessica. "You told Dr. Patterson that our father is a retired surgeon. You told your classmates that your family has money. You've spent 8 years creating a fictional background to justify belonging in this world." Dr. Patterson was looking at the documents, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Chen, is this accurate?" Jessica couldn't speak. She just stood there crying while her carefully constructed professional image crumbled around her. Sarah Kim pushed through the crowd. "It's true. she said quietly. Jessica's been lying about her family for years. She told everyone her parents were paying for school that she comes from money. She calls them the blue-collar people and says she's basically supporting herself. Other students started murmuring. The professor who'd been standing with Jessica earlier was shaking his head. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. This was about integrity, honesty, the character that medical professionals are supposed to demonstrate. The thing is, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room, I was proud to support my sister's education. I was proud that my work, that honest construction work, could help someone become a doctor. I thought I was investing in our family's future. I picked up Dad's hard hat and looked at it, but it turns out I was just the embarrassing ATM for someone who was ashamed of where her money came from. I walked over to Jessica, who was still crying, surrounded by her sophisticated colleagues who now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. The tuition payment for next semester is due January 15th, I said quietly, just loud enough for everyone to hear. For the first time in 8 years, you'll need to figure out how to pay it yourself, because this embarrassing construction worker is done being your dirty little secret. I handed her Dad's hard hat. This represents real work and real sacrifice, something you'll need to learn about if you want to finish medical school. Maybe it'll remind you that your foundation was built by people you thought weren't good enough to acknowledge. I closed my briefcase and looked around the room one more time. Shocked faces, whispered conversations. Jessica collapsed in a chair with mascara streaks and my father's hard hat in her hands. Enjoy your sophisticated Christmas, I said. I'll be spending mine with people who aren't embarrassed to know me. The walk to the parking garage felt like the longest walk of my life. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, and part of me couldn't believe I'd actually done it. But with each step, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. 3 days later, the call started. Jessica crying and desperate. Mom begging me to reconsider. Dad trying to play peacemaker. But the most surprising call came from Dr. Patterson. Mr. Chen, I wanted to personally apologize for what happened at our gala, and I wanted you to know that we've had several conversations with Jessica about integrity and honesty in the medical profession. I appreciate that, Dr. Patterson. I also wanted to ask, have you ever considered that your story might help other students? We have several first-generation medical students who struggle with imposter syndrome, who feel like they don't belong because of their backgrounds. Your willingness to sacrifice for education and your dignity in how you handled this situation, that's exactly the kind of character we want to see in future physicians. I thought about Rebecca Martinez, the student who'd called to tell me I'd done the right thing, about all the kids from working families who might be struggling with shame about where they came from. What did you have in mind? A scholarship, in your father's name, for students from working-class families who want to pursue medicine. Would you be interested in helping us set something up? I looked at my kitchen table where Dad's hard hat had sat for 2 weeks. I'd brought it home from the gala, but it felt different now. Less like a reminder of Jessica's betrayal and more like a symbol of everything my family had built through honest work. Yeah, I said. I think my dad would like that. 6 months later, Jessica dropped out of medical school. Couldn't afford the final year without family support, and the student loans she qualified for weren't enough to cover both tuition and living expenses. She moved back home and got a job as a medical assistant, starting over at the bottom of the profession she'd almost completed. She still hasn't apologized. Not really. She's made attempts at reconciliation, showing up at construction sites, sending Christmas cards, asking Mom to invite us both to dinner. But she's never actually said the words, "I was wrong," or "I'm sorry," or "thank you for 8 years of sacrifice." Maybe she never will. Maybe that's okay. The Marcus Chen Memorial Scholarship for first-generation medical students has helped 12 students so far. Kids from families like mine, who understand that all honest work has dignity, who won't be embarrassed by the sacrifices that made their education possible. That's the real foundation we built. Not Jessica's medical career, but something that will help other kids remember where they came from while they're reaching for where they want to go. And every time I put on Dad's hard hat for another day of honest work, I remember that I'm not just a construction worker. I'm someone who builds things that last. Someone who understands that the strongest foundations are built by people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. Someone who learned that your worth isn't measured by whether sophisticated people want you at their dinner table. It's measured by whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of what you've built. Jessica wanted a sophisticated Christmas with important people. I got something better. I got my dignity back, and that's a foundation that'll never crumble.